Thank you. Good evening. It's Monday, it's 6:30 p.m. on Monday, the 30th of September 2024. And I'd like to welcome everybody to this East Staffordshire Borough Council meeting of the Climate Change and Environment Scrutiny Committee. Now then, may I remind everyone present that this meeting is being broadcast live via YouTube, and the recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all councillors and officers ensure that when they speak, they switch their microphones on, and when they're finished speaking, they switch their microphones off. This is extremely important for the live stream to ensure the cameras can find you and can focus on the individual who is speaking at the time. So it's also a good idea, I think, to put your name placards in front of your microphone so we can see who you are. And if anyone hasn't got one, then please introduce themselves when they speak. So we will now start with item 1, which is apologies for absence. Could we receive any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We haven't received any apologies this evening.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have any declarations of interest to declare on the items under discussion at this evening's meeting? No? Thank you. Item 3, urgent business. To consider any urgent business brought forward to the committee under Rule 12. I'm not aware of any urgent business for consideration at this meeting. Item 4, questions from the public. We have received a series of questions from a member of the public in advance of the meeting. In the absence of this person, I will read out the questions and the response from the Cabinet Member for Environment, Climate Change in respect of a subscription-based garden waste collection service. So question 1 was, how has the mandate for this charge been obtained? The response is as follows. National legislation places a statutory duty on the council to collect garden waste from households. The legislation also allows the council to charge for this service, and a significant majority of councils have already done this. On a local level, Cabinet has considered this against a reduction in central government funding of 6.4 million since 2011-2012. This, combined with the annual cost of the service, 1.1 million, and advice from our external auditors and the need to explore options for further savings, led to the principle of charging being approved for those that wish to opt in to the service. Question 2. How has this proposed charge been made known to the residents of East Staffordshire, as I only became aware of it through a general election campaign leaflet? The response: the principle of introducing a subscription-based service was considered at a public meeting of the Council's Cabinet on 20th of May 2024. You may find the relevant report, item 7, at the following link. The link is given as Cabinet 20th May 2024 / East Staffordshire Borough Council eaststaffsbc.gov.uk. The pre-election period, running up to July 4, 2024, places certain restrictions on what can and can't be promoted to the public. However, following the general election, the Council commenced a public consultation on the charging rates, and any concessions will be set out and put into the public domain. Question 3. How are the costs for the collection currently funded? The response: the cost of collection is funded through the Council's revenue budget at a cost of 1.1 million each year to the Council. Question 4. If the answer to 2 is through the council tax, does that mean there will be a corresponding reduction in the council tax? The response: it is important to share some context around the council's finances here. The council has seen unprecedented reductions of 6.4 million or 78% in its core funding from central government since austerity measures were introduced in 2011-2012. Council Council tax income accounts for approximately half of the income of the council, and it therefore can't be considered to cover all the costs of the council incurs in delivering services. It should also be confirmed that nearly 70% of local authorities in England have already implemented a subscription-based service with annual charges ranging from £25 to over £90 per bin. Question 5. What are we supposed to do with the green waste in the winter period when it is intended not to collect from households? The response: we are proposing a short break in December/January when the demand for the service is extremely low. During these weeks, our collection tonnage falls to approximately 10% of those in the peak growing season. Furthermore, the recent public consultation highlighted only 42% of respondents use the service each week and 45% use it during the growing season only. Should households produce garden waste, we recommend the use of composting or the HWRC. The HWRC is the Home Waste and Recycling Centre, and this must be the one that's on one run by county on Centrum Way. Thank you about that. That's my idea. So that is the response to that. Members have all had a chance to read the question and the response. Has anyone got any further questions or any comments they'd like to raise? Okay, in that case then, item 5. Questions. To receive any questions submitted by any member of the committee for answer by the leader of the cabinet member or officers of the council. Questions must be received by 24th September. No questions from members of the committee have been received in advance of the meeting. Item 6. Public minutes of the previous meeting held on 24th of June 2024. I propose the approval of the public minutes in the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? Seconder for public minutes of the last meeting. Was there anybody who was here at the public meeting last time? Sorry, Councillor Bailey. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. We will now go to the vote. All those for? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. Confirmed. The vote is carried. Item 7. Scrutiny review of impact of green waste subscription on climate change. The Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Environment has been asked to attend the meeting to respond to questions from the committee. I now invite Jonathan Lowe, who is supporting this review, to provide an update on the review. Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, just to give you a bit of context from people that aren't part of the subgroup. So at the meeting of Scrutiny, Climate Change and Environment Committee held on the 24th of June 2024, committee members agreed to progress a review of what impact green waste subscriptions could have on climate change when the subscriptions come into effect. It was agreed that a subgroup of the committee comprising the members listed above, which is Councillor George Allen, Councillor Mick Huckabee and Councillor Slater, would lead the review on behalf of the committee. So basically there's a few core questions that I'd like to mention that have been agreed on. If I can bring it up. Sorry about that. Okay, so the core questions are: what is the environmental impact as a result of the contamination of grey bins with green waste? So I've been checking other local authority reports, local authorities that have already been charging for the collection of green waste. The environmental impact for refused bins because of contamination, the impact of the increase in the tonnage of waste to be burned because the residual waste goes to Veolia, ERF. So my suggestion is to check back in, say, 1 to 2 years' time to get some actual figures. So what happens to the green waste once it's burned at the ERF? Does it release carbon? So I'm drafting an email to Veolia to find out what the impact would be on more green waste going into the grey bins. The second question was fly tipping of green waste. So again, checking other local authority reports, have they seen an increase in fly tipping of green waste after the subscription comes in? At the moment, I mean, there's still responses to be received, but at the moment they're saying no, they haven't seen a huge increase in fly tipping. Again, for burning of green waste from residents that are not paying for this subscription, whether they actually burn the green waste in their gardens. Again, local authorities that I've heard from at the moment are saying no. The other question is forecasted reduction in number of collections or the uptake, including overall tonnage. So are we going to see a reduction in the uptake or the use of the collections? It's predicted that 45% is the figure we'll see when we start charging. So we could look at are gardens going to be just left to overgrow? Are we going to see an impact of resources for untidy land complaints to enforcement? You could see a benefit if people are leaving their gardens to grow. You could see an increase in the use of the household waste recycling centre on Chobnall Road. We'd have to check with Staffordshire County Council on that. Are we going to see an increase or an impact, sorry, on the climate from the extra use of vehicles of residents visiting the HWRC? Rather than just one single refuse wagon collecting the bins, are we going to see residents to and froing from the HWRC to empty their waste? Another question is introduction of a banded subscription compared to a flat rate. This is a question that Councillor Huckabee wanted to pursue. So I've been looking at which local authorities offer a banded rate, a banded subscription rather than a flat rate. There are some local authorities, such as Barnet Council, they offer a rebate after a full payment is made. North Somerset offer a 75% reduction in the fee for residents receiving council tax reductions. Hounslow Council, they do something similar where there's a 50% reduction. And Vale of Glamorgan, I know these are not local councils, but they offer half-year subscriptions as well as the full-year subscription. And then we're going to look at the impacts of the different ways to charge, whether it affects the uptake. And the last question is the increased participation in home composting, its impact on the environment. and to encourage home composting would see a reduction in emissions and an increase in biodiversity. So it's another question to explore. And if I can just add that Councillor Allen, you suggested another question: were the above impacts considered when the decision to introduce a chargeable service was brought in? So this is being looked into. The report which was submitted 20th of May, titled Consideration of a Subscription-Based Garden Waste Service, is the report which was presented to Cabinet. And yeah, we're going to explore to see whether these impacts were considered. And the final question, sorry for me, how can the service be of benefit to the environment? But I see that's a duplicate question, so we might leave that off.
Lovely. Thank you, Jonathan. Do any members of the committee have any questions for the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Environment? Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Just a quick one. Whilst Jonathan's just finished his précis of where we've got to so far, has the Cabinet Member got anything to say or respond to that in response?
Well, I mean, I can certainly respond. When I read the scope, one of the things was saying what will be the impact of green waste subscriptions on climate change. Obviously, there's been no charge as yet, and we'll only know the impact after it's been done, but we expect the impact to be very, very positive because of all the things we can do with the money that will be raised. It'll enable us to reduce the council's carbon footprint, increase biodiversity, increase carbon capture, help us to adapt to people to adapt to climate change. It'll support ongoing tree maintenance, creating biodiverse areas within our parks, creating tree nurseries at the cemetery and Utox to Go garden, implementing various climate change initiatives, as well as solar panels on council buildings and tackling environment crime, mobile fly tipping vehicle, more enforcement officers, supporting voluntary and community groups, providing warm spaces, supporting those in need, a home insulation programme for low-income households across the world. All these can be improved and introduced because of the money that we get from this charge. So I think overall it will be very positive. You will say, well, we need to see. Well, certainly we do. And some of these questions you need to ask again in 12 months' time.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any more questions? Again, Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Quite a detailed response, given that we've sent a between Councillor Huckabee, the Chair, and myself, and with Jonathan. Jonathan's update tonight is news to me. I don't think we received it, and that's really good to hear that we've gotten so far. But useful to have it perhaps a week ago. It's quite a detailed response, so quite surprised that perhaps you've seen the report as it's unfolding, because I certainly haven't. And the scoping paper, I don't think that you referred to, I don't think it's been published either. So it'd be useful to understand how you know where that's come from. I've got a few other questions, though, Chair, if you want me to chuck them in now, and then the Cabinet Member can respond. So some of these questions might be picked up in the scoping paper and the review that we're doing, but I'm interested to see what the Cabinet Member's got to say now. He mentioned that this at least £800,000 that's going to be raised from it, and he suggested that there's going to be a number of things, good positive things that are going to come from it. I should hope so. It's £800,000. Has he got any plans or any ideas about what it might be spent on? Is there any we've been told that there's a need to raise it because there's a pound black hole in the council's finances. What plans does he have for the £800,000? Do you want to go through one at a time? I know Councillor Fletcher prefers to do one at a time. Do you not?
The answer is we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 years all the things, or certainly get started on all the things that I've mentioned. If you want to know what's coming up soon, then I need to look at another thing that I prepared. And you ask, you know, I seem to be well prepared. Well, you'd have been very remiss of me not to come in with possible answers to some of the questions you might ask. And if you want definite answers to all the questions you are going to ask, I suggest you let us have the questions in advance. However, so these are all covered in our corporate targets. Succeed in Bloom Awards, deliver the In Blooming Awards of maintainment a minimum of 3 gold awards in all categories. I think the success in the In Bloom Awards, which you will have heard of in the past few weeks, far exceed any targets that we had. So that's one thing. Same applies to its Your Neighbourhood Awards. Reviewing the council's tree policy, that's coming up in December this year. Establishing tree nurseries at the Go Garden, the plan for that will come out in November this year. Pilot opportunities to enhance nature and biodiversity on parks and open spaces, including reduced mowing regimes and wildflower planting. The date for that is March 25, but in fact an awful lot of that has already been done and already been piloted. And if I look at my own ward in particular, there are several areas of low mow areas, reduced mowing regimes and wildflower planting and tree planting. Evaluate the impact of replacing glyphosate with alternative methods. That report's coming out in November. Procure a mobile fly tipping vehicle. That's coming out this month. We're doing that, I think, Mark, is that right? Ensure that 75% of fly tipping is removed within 5 working days of receipt of notice. That comes out in March 2025. We've already dealt with implementing a charging scheme, although the level of charging has not fully been decided. That will be decided later this week. Implement climate change initiatives, September this year. We're already doing that. Provide an annual update on the council's emissions and actions achieved, and then recommend new actions and targets. That's coming out this month. Implement the energy audit, produce an options appraisal for implementation across different council buildings. That will be out this December. Produce an education programme, this is one that I really like, to help individuals, parish councils, schools and other organisations to calculate their carbon footprint and understand how to reduce it. That will be out in December, and in fact 2 schools in Winshill will, I think, be piloting that. Begin the procurement stage for work to deliver an expanded State Mill cemetery. That's October this year. I think I've said enough. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Sorry, you want to go again, Councillor Allen?
Yeah.
Please do.
Please, thanks, Chair. So thanks to Dennis for reading through a number of corporate plan targets. Do I take it then that the corporate plan that we passed in March was unfunded? Sorry, I'll expand. So you've read through a number of corporate plan targets, which I would hope were funded from the budget set in February. I asked what the £800,000 going to be going towards, what extra a resident's going to be getting. A lot of these things are things that have been in motion for a number of years. Things that have already been budgeted for. You've read out a list of things that have already been budgeted for. I'm asking what the £800,000 is going to go towards, over and above what we're already delivering.
No, the corporate targets were funded. We had Star Chambers to agree the funding for those things. We had this question at the meeting held earlier this year when people said, if you've not already made the decision to charge for garden waste, how can you include the money there? Well, the answer is you have to anticipate that this might come about. I mean, at that point, the actual decision hadn't been made, but certainly I wanted it to be made that we charged for garden waste, and we knew that the amount to be raised would be 800,000, so that was all in our forecasts.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any further? Councillor, has another question?
I think we're going round in circles on this, I'll leave that bit there and move on to some other questions. When we were considering whether to bring the charge in or not, was there any consideration given towards the impact on how much waste is going into the grey bin? I know we've had a council meeting where you said that you didn't care whether it went into the grey bin because it would just get incinerated and burnt and used for to create energy. But have you at any point considered the impact on the environment? Because yes, it's generating electricity, but it is nevertheless releasing carbon.
The answer to that is yes. Yes, we did consider that. I mean, there are various arguments about we hope that people will compost their bin, but if they don't compost it, it could well go to into the grey bin, in which case it will be incinerated. And there are advantages to incinerating as well, because both composting and incineration certainly produce carbon dioxide, but the incineration procedures that the county council use get rid of methane and nitric oxide, which is two of the very, very big influences on CO2 gases. No, greenhouse, very serious greenhouse gases, more so than CO2. Other than that CO2, there's more of it, yeah.
That's good. It'd be useful to understand. I appreciate you won't have the data now, but it'd be useful to understand in numbers how much waste do you expect to be deposited in the grey bin, because that's one of the questions that we sort of want to understand in part of the scoping paper. So if you can send us that information after the meeting, that'd be good. On the and that kind of links in with the, assessing the impact on the environment as well. Communication. One of the things I mentioned at the council meeting on Monday is communication. Communication with the public has been. I understand why this is, because I've been in control of the authority in previously, so I understand why this may well be. But simply consulting or starting a consultation and talking about it in the council chamber, talking about it in these meetings and putting some stuff on Facebook is only going to get to a certain number of people. So in terms of communication with residents, do you appreciate that a good number of residents may well not be aware of the consultation, may well not be aware that this is a very real thing that the council is going to start doing? And with that, when are you intending to write to every resident to tell them that this is happening?
Yeah, I am obviously aware that some people were not aware of the consultation. Short of knocking on every door, I don't know how you can make them all totally aware.
You can send a letter, is what I'm getting at. You can send a letter, is what I'm getting at.
When it comes to informing people about the results, I'll let Paul reply to that. There will be information going out, yeah?
Yes, that's right. Once a decision on the level of the charges, a bin tag will be placed on every single property's bin to inform them of those changes that are coming. That will have a link to the council's website, and that website will contain all the necessary information to inform residents of what's happening. when it's happening and what they need to do. It will also give useful information on issues such as home composting and alternatives.
The bin tag is quite a useful way of communicating with residents. I don't think it's as comprehensive as people would like it to be. Tags just generally get ripped off and chucked in the same bin as they're picking it up. But I do remember suggesting, I don't know whether it was me or somebody suggested, when this was first talked about from the get-go, using the bin tags as a way of advertising that there's a consultation. Has that been considered? Or I seem to remember it's either Paul, Farrer or Dennis that suggested that we'll have a think about that. Has that been considered, and why not? Has it not been taken forward?
Forgive me, gentlemen. Can I just interrupt, because this is very interesting. Councillor Allen, first of all, I'll just answer some questions for you. I answered some of the questions you've raised. The report Jonathan gave us, no, I've not seen it either. I'm very pleased I've seen it. It's very detailed, and we did agree, didn't we, that we would conclude this report. This is new information as well, perhaps to everybody else, apart from you and me, that we conclude this report within 6 to 9 months. Whereupon all these questions will be nicely formulated to present to the Cabinet to get the proper response. And secondly, the consultation, as far as I'm aware, we haven't agreed, I don't think we agreed to put the consultation in our review of the climate subscription charge, did we? It's maybe a good idea that we do, but we haven't got to that point yet, have we, as such? And I'm conscious that Councillor Huckabee isn't here to argue that point, so I just want to mention that to everybody. It is relevant, and what we've heard is useful, and the questions you've had, Councillor Allen, are useful to us. But it's not, strictly speaking, what we're here to discuss in this section. But anyway, I'll let Councillor Fletcher answer the question.
Well, I think I probably need to hear the question again, because there's a hissing sound, and my hearing's not ideal. But if I can just say one thing, I'd rather use the term subscription service rather than a tax, because it's not a tax. You know, people don't have to pay it. They subscribed to being part of it. If they want the bins collected, they subscribe.
I mean, forgive me, Councillor, did you say bin tags? You meant not tags. So
I was referring to the bin tags. You said you were going to.
The tags on the bins. That's what I thought.
We've turn the fan off now. So I'll repeat the question. So what I'm getting at is we're going to use bin tags to inform residents that there's a charge coming in. Why not use the bin tags to tell residents that there's a consultation ongoing now?
Consultation's over, isn't it? The consultation's over.
So why not use the bin tags to tell people that there was a consultation? If it's your preferred method of telling everybody that there's a new charge coming in, which is presumably an important thing to tell residents, surely telling them that there's a consultation ongoing, although it's now completed, in hindsight, I'm saying would have been a good idea as well. But I take the point, it hasn't been thought about, and perhaps that's an oversight.
Maybe I can discuss this with other people and consider that. Certainly I hadn't thought about it. I mean, I guess we could have used the bin tags to, in the first place, say there is going to be a consultation, but I don't know what the cost of that would be.
Mr. Risk, please.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, there will be a communication in terms of how the subscription is going to be rolled out. So that will be forthcoming once the decision has been made on the charging structure.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor.
Well, I'm happy to give way to any other member if there is, but.
Councillor Allen, please go ahead. Go on.
Thank you. So just more of a final one, I think. There's been suggestion that bringing in a brown waste subscription service fee would increase the amount of fly tipping, and I know you know that. How how's the council going to measure whether or not that's in fact happening? And the same goes, yeah, how's the council going to measure whether that's happening or not?
Yes, Mr. Risk, please go ahead.
Chair, if I can answer. We actually monitor fly tipping at the moment, and members get a monthly update, which we started fairly recently, beginning of this year. So members get a monthly update on the number of fly tipping incidents we have, and the number of collections that are made within a prescribed timescale, which is a KPI set by the administration, which is 5 days. So essentially, fly tipping will be monitored, and that will be used on an ongoing basis. So if there's more incidents of fly tipping, it'll be recorded through that method.
Councillor Fletcher, yes, please.
Having said that, the answer to the first part of your question, I mean, there's no guarantee that there won't be increased fly tipping, but we don't believe there will be, and the reason we don't believe there will be is that authorities around us in East Staffordshire who have recently begin to charge for things said there's been no increase in fly tipping when that's happened. So we don't expect it to happen here. But we won't be complacent about it.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Right. Does anybody else? Councillor Bailey.
Just wanted to clear one thing about the consultation, because the consultation actually has been, it was advertised on the council website. And I remember that I personally put the message on Horninglow and Outwoods Councillor's website about the consultation, and there was a link to, to the survey, so it was advertised. I can't see the need to advertise it again, especially now that it's over. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So we've the review may come up with suggestions for consultation in the future. May it not? Oh, sorry. Beg your pardon. Sorry. Councillor Gould.
I think a lot of points have been made about the consultation. I think residents were really disappointed that there was no consultation to say whether they were having a fee or not. And I know from speaking to some residents as well, because we pointed them in the direction of the consultation. They were disappointed that the first question is, how much do you want to pay? Before it went on to giving any feedback. I think we could have had a little bit more of a almost discretion, thinking that the charge is coming through, but it would have been interested to see how many people would actually choose to do it. A little bit like the level of service or the level of fee that people were paying. People are naturally going to go for the lowest. I think they were very disappointed that they weren't allowed to have the option of saying, I'd rather not, or I will not be making use of the service. So I think that is where certainly a lot of disgruntlement came through. Just for we pointed them in the terms of the consultation, but there was no option to say, oh, it's coming in, this is purely on what you're willing to pay.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Yes, from my point of view, the review is the impact of green waste subscription on climate change. That's my point of view, but certainly the consultation, we may be able to make comments on it, but this is for the future, isn't it? This is for the future event, so we should really focus our advice we give to the Cabinet when we've finished our review on what you can do in future events. It's we're going over the same ground here, yes, okay, we're arguing about what we could have done better, but what we can do in the future should be where we focus on. So I'd like to move away if we can. Forgive me, Mr. Risk, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on a couple of points just for clarification, really, in terms of some of Councillor Allen's comments and Councillor Fletcher's responses. Councillor Fletcher went through the corporate plan in some great detail about some of the things that the administration intends to bring forward. And Councillor Allen suggested that meant that these things weren't funded. That isn't the case, actually. Some of the things in the corporate plan, some of the items in the corporate plan are things that where a decision is being made this year that will have an impact on the future. For example, there's a report coming through shortly, I think, to the next reporting cycle on the use of glyphosate. and whether the council uses that or not. That is something that will cost money if we decide not to use it, for example. I won't say too much because that report needs to come forward and members need to consider it. There are also things like the council's tree policy that may have implications for future budgets and pressure on the budget in terms of how the council manages its trees, its tree stock. And similar, there's things like decarbonisation. So if the council is going to move forward with decarbonisation in any strong form, then it will need the funds to do that. That is what this money will be used for, some of the things that this money will be used for. Just on another point, if I may, Chair, with Paul here from an operational point of view in terms of, well, not sure about the entire context, but the grey bin in terms of the use or the residual recycling in there. We'll obviously know that once we know what the subscription rate is, but we can't know that now. So again, in terms of your review, that is one for future rates that we can actually look at sort of 12 months hence. I just wanted to make those points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Riss. Thank you. That's good. Councillor Allen, I think this might be the last question, perhaps. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, just for clarity, I wasn't suggesting that the budget, the corporate plan's unfunded. I asked Councillor Fletcher for a list, what he plans, or what the council plans to spend the £800,000 is on, and then perhaps tongue-in-cheek suggested that it's not. The list that he gave was meant that it was unfunded. I take the point.
Can I just say, I mean, that is £800,000 a year. And the corporate plan is... Yeah,
just raise one question though, that Mark suggested the carbon reduction measures. I assumed those had been paid for through the borrowing that the council's taken out. Is that not right?
Sorry, the point I was making was that there are future decarbonisation projects that are coming forward, I think, for December, I believe, that may require some additional council funding.
Yeah, so that falls into my suggestion that these things are already funded, so the £800,000 is over and above. Can I ask one further question then, Chair? Are there any plans to prevent residents using the grey bin to dispose of green waste?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know how we would stop them anyway, but it's not. Most people won't dispose of the grain waste. I'm fairly confident that some will. I don't see it as a problem. Any problems associated with that, or any increase in carbon dioxide as a result of that, will be offset by all the good things that we can do with the money that we're going to use.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Allen, I think perhaps when myself, yourself and Councillor Kirby and Mr Lowe meet again, we can perhaps investigate if there are ways we can answer that question, perhaps. Okay. Thank you. Now, unless anyone else has got him really burning, I want to say, I'll say burning or not, can we move on to item number 8? Oh, Councillor Allen, last time...
Well, sorry, Chair, I thought you was at some point going to bring in the petition organiser to ask, give him his 5 minutes at the committee meeting.
Forgive me, it's not on my agenda, and the petition organiser hasn't asked him to speak at this meeting. I can see he's here, but he hasn't asked to speak. And so it's not on the agenda, and we have got a lot of agendas to go through.
Okay. I've got the Constitution in front of me, Chair. I'm happy to read out a section of it, which leads my thoughts to why I'm thinking he would.
Forgive me, Councillor Allen. I haven't got that section in front of me now, and we haven't discussed this. Let me have a word with my officers, please.
Well, happy for that to be, which section there to be highlighted, so we can take that under consideration.
So it's 15.1 of 4J of the petition part 4J of the Constitution that deals with petitions. 15.1 says, if the petition organiser is not satisfied with the outcome of the Council's consideration of petition, they may refer the matter to the Review and Scrutiny Committee for review by notifying the petitions officer. I assumed that the fact that this was on the agenda, that that the petition organiser was not satisfied with the council's response, and then 15.3 says at the meeting the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will invite the petition organiser to make their representations, explain why they consider the response to be insufficient. So this is about the petition organiser saying he's dissatisfied with the council's response to the petition on Monday evening, namely, and then to explain why they are dissatisfied with the council's response to the petition.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. I've not had any advice to that effect. Again, I'll consult my officers, please.
So my understanding is we haven't received that notification from the petition organiser. The reason this was on the agenda was from the previous meeting where we agreed to invite the Cabinet member and relevant officers to...
Thank you. Right, that's what that, again, so in that case then, I thank everyone for their contribution so far. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 8 then, which is the Healthy Homes Initiative. First of all, forgive me, Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to remain in the meeting, or have you got to get off anywhere first? You're welcome to leave if you wish. You say. Oh, thank you. Right, Healthy Homes Initiative. To receive a presentation, you will recall at the last meeting it was agreed that the Environmental Health Manager be invited to this meeting to give an update on the success of the initiative and to answer questions from the councillors. I now invite Rachel Little to give a presentation on the Healthy Homes Initiative. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. We were invited to take part in a Healthy Homes project by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, which provides funding up to £130,000 to support the damp and mould enforcement. We've received £65,000 to date and are awaiting a second payment. The funding is to be spent on additional staff resources, training, equipment, communications and engagement and data collection. To date, we've been successful in recruiting additional staff. We have 2 graduate environmental health officers and have recently employed an experienced environmental health officer to join the team who started in September. Due to the time pressures associated with the funding, we've also used a temporary agency environmental health officer, and that position has now ended. The majority of officers have completed damp and mould training, and this is also being rolled out to all inspecting and visiting officers, along with energy assessor training for environmental health officers. Additional training is being developed for all visiting council officers to ensure that referrals can be made for cases that need support. We've already undertaken 1 advisory session during a recent landlord forum. However, we are also developing a landlord and letting agent training course on responsibilities in relation to damp and mould. To date, we've purchased additional hygrometers, protometers, data loggers to monitor ongoing issues with damp and mould, oil-filled radiators for people that have lost heating and need emergency heating, and additional IT equipment. We've drafted a damp and mould strategy and action plan, which aims to proactively target areas of concern to reduce damp and mould in all tenures, investigate all damp and mould complaints in privately rented accommodation, introduce a referral and reporting mechanism for other council departments and partner organisations, increase training awareness for the Landlords Forum, and increase communication campaigns through the website and social media. To date this financial year, we've received 96 private housing complaints. Of those, 35 include damp and mould complaints, 15 include excess cold complaints. 27 inspections have identified hazards in relation to damp and mould and excess cold. 17 of those have been assessed as a Category 1 hazard, which requires formal enforcement action. 24 of those have been identified as Category 2 hazards, which can have informal action initially. 7 enforcement notices have been served to date. 1 of those is a hazard awareness notice. 3 improvement notices have been served, and 3 emergency prohibition orders have been served, which means that those 3 properties cannot be resided in currently. We're awaiting the completion of a stock condition survey, which will enable us to identify the areas that need to be targeted. We've changed our approach to damp and mould complaints, so all complaints receive an inspection. These will also receive a survey to complete following the visit, and they are received and reviewed by the Department of Levelling Up. We are also in the process of setting up referral mechanisms from other council departments and partner organisations such as community health visitors and GPs. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions? Councillor Owen, yes?
Thank you, Rachel. Did you say there was a part-time position that's not been renewed? Rather like it's not suggested it's a subscription base, but yeah.
No, we always set out to have 2 full-time equivalent environmental health officers. We've covered those with 1 environmental health officer and 2 part-time graduate environmental health officers. We did have a temporary agency environmental health officer, mainly because the project was launched in April. We only found out about the funding at the start of April. So it's taken us some time to get the environmental health officers in. That temporary agency staff has enabled us to effectively hit the ground running.
Any more questions? Right. I've got not a question, Rachel, but I think I recall the reason why you're invited today was at the last meeting there was talk amongst the committee about doing a review into the Healthy Homes initiative, or rather housing stock and the condition and insulation and that sort of thing. So that's principally, I believe, why you're here this evening, to give us a bit of background into that. But I can't remember now who was going to be on this subgroup committee. If we got that far, perhaps we didn't get that far. But certainly it was an area we were going to discuss. James.
Yeah, just to clarify on what you've said there, I think you're absolutely right. At the last committee meeting, I think we said that Councillors Gould and Holton would take this forward as a piece of work. So I suppose sort of through you, we're sort of segueing into the next item, really, if you don't mind me sort of carrying on. But in terms of the scrutiny review programme, I think where we were is we've essentially got 3 items on our programme. We've obviously spoken about the waste subscription. The plan is that the scrutiny officers will be convening the subgroup there to obviously take stock of the information that we've received tonight and build that into the report moving forward. And secondly, as I said, the Healthy Homes initiative is in a very similar position, really. So I think now that we've heard the information from Rachel there this evening, then the subgroup can once again convene and sort of make a plan as to where we go with that review, to be able to bring that forward to the next committee meeting, as soon as possible. And then the third review is the community engagement review that we've been working on as a subgroup as well. And for me, we're very close with that one to a final draft report. That final draft report is with that particular subgroup as we speak, really, for input on conclusions, recommendations in terms of that. So that's being discussed by members, again, ahead of that coming back to this committee for approval as soon as we can. So I think that one should really be imminent, and then the other 2 will be taken forward through the subgroups as I've mentioned. So, probably through you, Chair, given where we are with these reviews, and that the next meeting is scheduled for the middle of January, it might make sense to, schedule an additional committee meeting, maybe November time, to look at signing off that engagement work, and also then to be able to, provide further updates on the waste subscription and the Healthy Homes work, and potentially also then to look at what we might do next in terms of future reviews as well. So I just wanted to throw that out as some food for thought there. I know future meeting dates is obviously on the agenda later this evening, but back to you, Chair, after that.
Yeah, thank you, James. To James, any questions, anybody? Well, that seems straightforward, doesn't it?
Yeah, so just to say, the Democratic Services Officers will, of course, ascertain a suitable date, and again, glean availability with the committee members as well, and get that in the diaries as soon as we can. But I would suggest probably November.
Thank you, James. There you go. Be warned, people. Next meeting probably November. Right. Item 10: Public Executive Decision Records. Enclosure 2. A list of public executive decisions has been circulated with the agenda. Does anyone have any questions on any of these? Yes, Councillor Allen, go.
190.24, adoption of updated terms of reference to Staffordshire Leaders Board. I know that this is largely voluntary, I guess, for the local authority to get involved in, but it may turn into something that has some quite significant implications for the way local governments are constructed locally, especially given the government's interested in what local authorities think, or how local authorities think local government should be reformed going forward. I just wondered if it would be useful that, I think it would be useful that if the leader, and it's probably the chief exec in this case, came to the next meeting to discuss what the leaders' thoughts were about how ESBC engages with the leaders' board going forward, and if he's got any thoughts about local government restructure, and if you, I can just see this being something that sort of smacks everyone in the face, and everyone wondering where's this come from. So it just one to be kept up to date, really.
Yes, Councillor, I think that's a very good idea. Yes, if we can arrange that, that sounds good. Any more comments from anybody else? Just to remind everybody, any comments about the Levi funding and the EV charging points? Any questions about that? No? Okay. Thank you. Oops, sorry, leave on. Okay. In that case then, bearing in mind Councillor Allen suggested about inviting the leader to a meeting about what we just talked about. Item number 11, date of next meeting. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on the 13th of January, but we've just said we're going to have another one, hopefully to finish off the scrutiny reviews that have already started. However, I'd like to propose, there's another, oh there you go, yes, I'd like to propose another meeting prior to that to sign off scrutiny and review engagement. That's fine, so that's already been done, hasn't it? Right, item 12 in that case then, corporate plan performance. I now, in quarter one, I now invite James to present the corporate plan performance report for quarter one. Please note that Appendix 2 and 3 will be considered in the private part of the meeting, so if councillors have any points to discuss on these sections, please raise them in the private part of the meeting at item 13. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the quarter one performance report looking at the council's progress towards achieving its corporate priorities as at the end of June of this financial year, along with the latest updates on the leisure operating contract as well as the Towns Fund programme as well. But firstly, in terms of the corporate plan, if we look at the 79 live indicators, this equates to the council being at 94.94% green overall. It's just 1.27% amber, and then just 3.8% red using the defined traffic light style system of ratings that we use. So as you can see, the numbers suggest that the council's corporate performance continues to be very positive. The small number of red and amber targets that I've mentioned, they are all detailed in the tables you can see on pages 8 and 9 of the main report, just to provide a bit of narrative, the context around the situation with each of those indicators. And then the report goes on to provide information on the performance of the leisure operating contract, which you can see summarised in section 6, which is similarly very positive. And then finally, we have the performance of the Towns Fund programme. That's detailed in section 7 of the report. There's some information there on the council's own High Street Linkages project, and also shows a positive picture really on the 3 partner projects as well. Then as has been alluded to, the further detail is provided in the 2 appendices which are on the agenda later this evening. So that's a very high level summary of the report as a whole. I hope you can see from the information that's been circulated, generally speaking, we seem to be in a very good position across all 3 strands that's covered in that report. But happy to take any questions away.
Thank you, James. Any questions from the committee? Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, James. On my page again. Oops. So we have 3 items to consider in private. So I will now move that in accordance with section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting as it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that there would be disclosed exempt information as defined in paragraphs Part I of Schedule 12A of the Act, indicated in brackets before each item number on the agenda. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gould, thank you very much. Thank you. We will now go to the vote. All those for. Thank you. So that's carried unanimously. I will now wait for the members of the public to leave and for the recording to be switched off. Thank you for coming, members of the public. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Thank you.